You know that feeling, don't you? When you wake up at 3 in the morning and the first thing you feel isn't the softness of your pillow, but the weight of everything you've been carrying. The words that were said, the words that weren't, the moments when someone you loved became someone you couldn't recognize, and worse, the moments when you became someone you couldn't recognize either. I've been there too, honey, lying in that darkness, feeling like my chest was a storage room for every hurt I'd ever collected, every betrayal wrapped in tissue paper, carefully preserved, every harsh word cataloged and filed, every disappointment dusted off and displayed like some terrible museum of pain. We do that, don't we? We become curators of our own suffering. And the strangest part, we think we're protecting ourselves. We think that by holding on to every slight, every wound, every moment of abandonment, we're somehow keeping ourselves safe from it happening again. As if pain were a vaccine against future pain. As if remembering every detail of how we were hurt could somehow armor us against tomorrow's arrows. But you already know what I'm going to say, don't you? You already feel it in your bones. This weight isn't protecting you, it's aging you. Not in years, but in weariness. The kind of tired that sleep can't cure. The kind of heavy that no amount of rest can lift. I remember a time when I carried so much anger towards someone who had broken my trust, carried it like precious cargo. Checked on it every morning to make sure it was still there, still fresh, still justified. And it was justified, Lord knows, it was. But justified and healing are two different countries, and you can't live in both at the same time. The weight of unforgiveness is peculiar. It starts out feeling like strength, like dignity, like self-respect. I will not forget what you did to me. We say, chin up, spine straight. And for a while, that feels like power. But seasons change, and what felt like strength in spring becomes a burden by winter. What felt like dignity becomes a chain. What felt like self-respect becomes self-imprisonment. You see, the memory of pain is different from the pain itself. The event happened once, but in our minds, we let it happen every day. Every single day, we wake up and press play on that old movie. We watch it while we make our morning coffee. We let it run in the background while we're trying to work, trying to love, trying to live. And each time we play it, it feels as fresh as the first time. Sometimes even worse, because now it's mixed with all the what-ifs and if-onlys that we've added to the original script. I used to think that forgetting was the only way to heal, that if I could just develop amnesia about certain chapters of my life, I could finally be free. But that's not how we're built, is it? We're not computers where you can just delete files and empty the recycle bin. We're gardens, and in gardens, nothing ever really disappears. It just transforms, becomes compost, becomes soil, becomes the very ground from which new things grow. The weight we carry isn't just about them, the ones who hurt us. It's about us too. It's about the versions of ourselves we lost in those moments of pain. The innocent one who trusted too easily. The hopeful one who believed in forever. The open one who loved without calculating the risk. We mourn those versions of ourselves, and sometimes that grief is heavier than the anger itself. But here's what I've learned, and it took me decades to learn it. Carrying the weight doesn't make you noble, it makes you tired. And there's nothing holy about exhaustion. There's nothing sacred about spending your days bent under the burden of yesterday's pain. You know what you're carrying. You know exactly how much it weighs. You know the shape of it, the texture of it, the way it sits on your shoulders and presses against your ribs. You've carried it for so long that you've forgotten what it feels like to stand up straight. You've carried it for so long that you think this is just how life feels, heavy, difficult, like walking through mud. But what if I told you that you could put it down, not throw it away? That's not what I'm saying. Not pretend it never existed. Not invalidate your own experience or minimize what happened to you. Just put it down. Set it beside you for a moment. Let your shoulders remember what they were like before they became a shelf for storing pain. The first step isn't even forgiveness. The first step is just acknowledging the weight, looking at it clearly, saying, yes, I've been carrying this. Yes, it's heavy. Yes, I'm tired, because you can't heal what you won't acknowledge. You can't release what you pretend isn't there. Sometimes we're afraid to acknowledge the weight because we think that means admitting defeat, as if carrying pain were some kind of contest and putting it down means we've lost. But healing isn't about winning or losing. It's about choosing what serves your soul and what doesn't, choosing what helps you grow and what keeps you stuck, choosing between being right and being free. And you, my dear one, you deserve to be free. The weight of what we carry shapes us. It changes how we walk through the world. It affects how we love, how we trust, how we dream. It whispers in our ear when we try to hope again. It tugs at our sleeve when we try to move forward. It becomes such a familiar companion that we almost forget what life was like without it. But your back wasn't meant to be a monument to other people's mistakes. Your heart wasn't designed to be a warehouse for storing grievances. Your beautiful, precious life wasn't given to you so you could spend it as a curator of wounds. There's no shame in having carried these things for so long. We do what we need to do to survive. We carry what we think we need to carry to make sense of our world. But survival and living are two different things, and at some point, we have to choose which one we want. The weight tells us we're being loyal to our pain, that we're honoring what happened to us by never letting go of it. But pain doesn't need our loyalty. It doesn't need us to build shrines to it. It just needs us to feel it, acknowledge it, and then let it transform into wisdom. Because that's the secret that the weight doesn't want you to know. It can transform, not disappear, but transform. The same experiences that created the weight can become something else entirely, but only if we're willing to put the burden down long enough to see what else it could be. So right now, in this moment, I invite you to just notice. Notice the weight. Notice where you carry it in your body. Notice how long you've been carrying it. Notice without judgment, without criticism, without trying to change anything. Just notice. Because awareness is the beginning of everything, and you, my dear one, are ready to begin. There's a particular kind of loneliness that comes from being trapped inside your own memories. You can be surrounded by people who love you, in a room full of laughter, at a table abundant with blessings, and still feel like you're watching it all through a window. Because part of you, sometimes the biggest part isn't really there. It's back in that moment, that day, that conversation, that betrayal, that loss. I know that loneliness. I've lived in that prison too. The mind is a mysterious thing. It can take a single moment from our past and stretch it into eternity. It can take one Tuesday afternoon from 10 years ago and make it feel more real, more present, more alive than this very moment. And we become prisoners not of what happened, but of our endless revisiting of what happened. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? The way you can be washing dishes, and suddenly you're not in your kitchen anymore. You're back there, hearing those words again, feeling that shock again, experiencing that bewilderment, that rage, that heartbreak, as if time were a circle and you're doomed to meet that same point over and over again. Memory was meant to be a gift, a way of holding on to the sweetness of life, a method of learning from our experiences, a bridge between who we were and who we're becoming. But somewhere along the way, for those of us who've been deeply hurt, memory became something else. It became a courtroom where we're always either the prosecutor or the defendant. It became a movie theater that only shows one film on repeat forever. It became a prison where we're both the guard and the prisoner. The cruelest part about the prison of memory is that we hold the keys. We've always held the keys, but we've held on to our hurt for so long that we've forgotten we're even in a cell. We've decorated it. We've made it comfortable. We've convinced ourselves that this is just where we live now. I remember spending years replaying a conversation with someone who had broken my heart. Not just remembering it, inhabiting it. Each time I'd think of the perfect comeback I didn't say, the evidence I should have presented, the dignity I should have maintained, the words that would have changed everything. And each time I replayed it, I added new details, new dialogues, new endings, until I couldn't even remember what had actually been said and what I'd invented in my countless revisions. That's what we do in the prison of memory. We become editors of our own past. We cut and paste. We enhance the villains and polish our own role. We sharpen the knives that cut us until they're so sharp they cut us again, every single day. We take a wound that happened once and we make it happen 1,000 times. And here's what breaks my heart. While we're locked in that prison, life is happening. Real life, present life. The life where healing is possible. The life where new love wants to find us. The life where joy is waiting patiently at our door. But we can't see it. We can't feel it. Because we're not home. We're back there. In that moment that won't let us go, or rather, that we won't let go of. Sometimes we stay in the prison because we're afraid of who we'll be without our pain. It's been with us so long it feels like part of our identity. I'm the woman who was betrayed. I'm the one who was abandoned. I'm the person who was never chosen. We wear these identities like name tags, forgetting that we are so much more than the worst things that have happened to us. Other times we stay because we think remembering is a form of justice, as if by replaying the hurt, we're somehow making things right, as if by refusing to move on, we're holding someone accountable. But the only person being held is us. The only life being limited is ours. The people who hurt us, they've moved on, they're living their lives, they're probably not thinking about that Tuesday afternoon at all. The prison of memory is built from what ifs and if onlys. What if I had seen the signs? If only I had spoken up sooner. What if I had been different, better, more worthy of kindness? If only I had known then what I know now. These thoughts feel productive, like we're solving something, figuring something out. But we're not. We're just walking in circles in a very small room. You see, there's a difference between remembering and reliving. Remembering says, this happened to me. Reliving says, this is happening to me. Remembering acknowledges the past. Reliving abandons the present. Remembering can lead to wisdom. Reliving leads only to more pain. I used to think that if I just analyzed my painful memories enough, I'd find the answer, the reason, the lesson that would make it all make sense. I thought understanding why would set me free. But sometimes there is no satisfying why. Sometimes people hurt us because they're hurting. Sometimes they betray us because they've betrayed themselves first. Sometimes they leave because they don't know how to stay, and no amount of analysis will change that. The prison of memory whispers lies to us. It tells us that pain is proof of importance, that the depth of our hurt reflects the depth of what we lost. That holding on to the wound is a way of holding on to what was beautiful before the wound. But pain is not a measure of love. Suffering is not a tribute to what was sacred. You can honor what was beautiful without enshrining what destroyed it. Here's what I know now that I didn't know then. The prison of memory is voluntary. No one is making us stay. No one is holding that door shut but us. And the day we realize that is the day we begin to plan our escape. It doesn't happen all at once. You don't just decide one morning to be free and walk out into the sunshine. It's more like slowly recognizing that you've been looking at the same four walls for years, and maybe, just maybe, there's a door you haven't tried, or a window you haven't opened, or a key you haven't used. The first step is often just curiosity. What would it be like to think about something else? What would it feel like to go one whole hour without revisiting that pain? What might be waiting for you outside this cell you've called home? Because something is waiting. Life is waiting. Not the life you planned before everything fell apart. Not the life you would have had if that hadn't happened, but life nonetheless. A different life, maybe even a deeper life. Because the people who have been prisoners often make the most passionate advocates for freedom. The people who have been broken often have the most beautiful ways of helping others heal. But first, we have to recognize the prison for what it is. Not a monument to our pain, not a sacred duty to remember, not a way of honoring what we've been through, just a prison. A small, confining space that we've outgrown. A place that once kept us safe when we were too wounded to face the world, but that now keeps us from the very healing we seek. Your memories are real. What happened to you matters. Your pain is valid, but you are not required to live inside that pain forever. You are not obligated to wake up every morning and put on those chains. You are not destined to see every new day through the bars of yesterday's hurt. The door is open, my dear one. It's always been open. And when you're ready, not rushed, not pushed, but ready, you can walk through it. You can visit that prison when you need to. You can acknowledge what happened there, but you don't have to live there anymore. You don't have to live there anymore. They tell us to be strong. They tell us not to cry. They tell us to move on, to get over it, to let bygones be bygones. As if healing were as simple as deciding not to hurt anymore. As if we could just flip a switch and turn off the pain like a light. But you and I both know it doesn't work that way, don't we? The truth is, we can't heal what we won't feel. And really feeling takes a kind of courage that no one talks about. I spent years trying to outrun my feelings. I thought if I just stayed busy enough, achieved enough, smiled enough, I could skip over the messy part of healing. I thought I could go straight from wounded to wise without passing through the valley of tears. But feelings are patient. They'll wait. They'll wait decades if they have to. And they'll keep showing up, dressed in different clothes maybe, but carrying the same message: deal with me. You know those moments, don't you? When the feeling rises up out of nowhere, you're in the grocery store, and you see someone who walks like they did, and suddenly you can't breathe. You're driving to work, and that song comes on, and you have to pull over because you can't see through the tears. You're at your grandchild's birthday party, and joy and grief get so tangled up you don't know which one is which. These ambush moments used to terrify me. I thought they meant I wasn't healing. I thought they were proof that I was broken beyond repair. But now I know better. Now I know they're not setbacks. They're invitations. Invitations to feel what needs to be felt, to honor what needs to be honored, to release what needs to be released. But here's where it gets tricky. How do you feel without drowning? How do you open your heart to pain without letting it sweep you away? How do you honor your feelings without becoming them? It took me a long time to learn that feeling and drowning are not the same thing. Feeling says, I acknowledge this pain. Drowning says, I am this pain. Feeling moves through you like weather. Drowning makes you believe you are the storm. I remember the first time I let myself really feel the betrayal I'd been carrying. Not think about it. I'd done plenty of that. But feel it. I was alone in my house, and something in me just broke open. And I cried. Lord, how I cried. Not pretty tears, not dignified tears, the kind of crying that comes from your belly, the kind that makes sounds you didn't know you could make, the kind that leaves you exhausted and empty and somehow, strangely, cleaner. I thought I might die from the feeling. I thought my heart might actually break into pieces, but it didn't. Instead, something else happened. The feeling moved through me like a wave. It came, it crashed, it receded. And I was still there, still breathing, still whole, more whole, actually, than I'd been in years. You see, feelings are meant to move. The word emotion itself comes from the Latin word meaning to move out. But when we're afraid of our feelings, when we lock them down and board them up, they can't move, they get stuck. They ferment, They turn into something else: bitterness, anxiety, numbness, rage. They poison us from the inside, not because feelings are toxic, but because anything that can't flow becomes stagnant. The courage to feel is not about being overwhelmed. It's about being a witness to your own heart. It's about saying, yes, this hurts. Yes, this is hard. Yes, I wish this hadn't happened. And yes, I can feel this without becoming it. Sometimes we're afraid to feel because we think we'll never stop. We think if we let ourselves cry, we'll cry forever. If we let ourselves feel the anger, we'll burn everything down. If we let ourselves touch the grief, we'll never find our way back to joy. But feelings don't work that way. They're more like children than monsters. They just want to be seen, heard, acknowledged. Once they feel heard, they usually quiet down on their own. I learned to make friends with my feelings by giving them space, but also boundaries. I'd say, okay, grief, I see you. I'm going to sit with you for the next 20 minutes. I'm going to feel you fully. And then I'm going to get up and make dinner. And you know what? It worked. The feelings came, they had their say, and then they moved on. Not forever they'd visit again, but each visit got a little shorter, a little less devastating, a little more manageable. The courage to feel also means feeling the good stuff, because when we numb ourselves to pain, we numb ourselves to everything. When we build walls to keep out the hurt, we also keep out the wonder. When we armor our hearts against betrayal, we also armor them against beauty. I notice this in women our age especially. We've been hurt, so we become careful. We've been disappointed, so we lower our expectations. We've been betrayed, so we stop trusting. And slowly, without meaning to, we make our lives smaller and smaller. Safer, maybe, but smaller. But what if feeling it all is the price of aliveness? What if the capacity to hurt is directly related to the capacity to heal? What if the depth of our pain is just evidence of the depth of our ability to love? There's an art to feeling without drowning. It's like swimming in the ocean. You don't fight the waves, that's how you exhaust yourself. You don't go limp, that's how you get pulled under. You find that sweet spot between resistance and surrender. You work with the water, not against it. You trust your body's wisdom to float. The same is true with feelings. You don't fight them, but you don't let them be the boss of you either. You acknowledge them, you respect them, you give them room to express themselves, but you also remember who you are. You remember that you are bigger than any feeling, that you have survived every feeling you've ever had, that feelings are experiences, not identities. Sometimes people ask me, but what if I start crying and can't stop? And I say, you will stop. You'll stop when your body is done crying. You'll stop when that particular wave of grief has moved through. You'll stop because you're human, and humans are built for resilience, even when we forget it. The courage to feel is really the courage to be human, to be vulnerable, to admit that we're not made of stone, that things affect us, that we can be hurt, but also that we can heal, that we can feel profound pain and profound joy, sometimes in the same day. That our hearts are not fortresses but gardens, meant to experience all the seasons. So when the feelings come, and they will come, try not to run. Try not to hide. Try not to talk yourself out of them, or minimize them, or pretend they're not there. Instead, bow to them, honor them. Say, thank you for showing me how deeply I can feel. Thank you for reminding me that I'm alive. Thank you for trusting me to handle you, because you can handle them. You can feel without drowning. You can hurt without breaking. You can grieve without disappearing. You can rage without destroying everything. You can touch your pain without becoming it. This is the paradox of healing. We have to feel it to heal it. We have to go through it to get through it. We have to stop running from our hearts and start running toward them, messy and broken and beautiful as they are. Your feelings are not your enemies. They're your teachers. They're showing you where the wounds are so you can tend to them. They're showing you what matters to you. They're showing you that you're a human being who has lived and loved and lost and survived. And that, my dear one, takes courage. The kind of courage they don't give medals for. The kind of courage that happens in the quiet of your own heart, where no one sees but you. The kind of courage that changes everything. So feel what you need to feel. Cry when you need to cry. Rage when you need to rage. And trust that you won't drown. Trust that you're learning to swim in deeper waters. Trust that every feeling you allow yourself to feel is teaching you how to be free. Because on the other side of feeling is freedom. And you, brave soul, are already on your way. Let me tell you something about forgiveness that might surprise you. It has nothing to do with them. Nothing at all. It's not about letting them off the hook. It's not about saying what they did was okay. It's not about pretending it didn't happen or minimizing how much it hurt. Forgiveness, real forgiveness, is about setting yourself free from the job of being their judge, jury, and executioner. I fought this truth for years. Years, honey. I thought forgiveness meant weakness. I thought it meant betraying my own pain. I thought it meant they would win and I would lose. But I had it all backwards, completely backwards. You see, unforgiveness is a full-time job. It requires constant vigilance. You have to tend to it every day, like a garden of thorns. You have to water it with your thoughts, feed it with your energy, protect it from the gentle winds of grace that sometimes blow through. It's exhausting work, this unforgiveness. And the salary? Bitterness. That's all it pays. Bitterness and exhaustion and a life lived in reaction to someone else's choices. I remember the moment I first understood what forgiveness really was. I was washing dishes. Isn't it funny how wisdom comes in the most ordinary moments? And I realized I had been waiting for them to apologize, waiting for them to see what they'd done, waiting for them to make it right, waiting for justice, waiting for something, anything that would make the scales balance again. And in that moment, elbow deep in soapy water, I understood I could wait forever. They might never see. They might never understand. They might never apologize. They might go to their grave thinking they did nothing wrong. And if I waited for them to unlock my prison, I would die there too. That's when forgiveness stopped being about them and started being about me. Forgiveness is not a feeling. Lord knows, if we waited to feel forgiving, some of us would wait until the stars fell from the sky. Forgiveness is a decision, a choice, a quiet revolution you stage in your own heart, where you overthrow the dictator of resentment and install a new government of grace. It doesn't happen all at once. That's another lie. We've been told that forgiveness is a one-time event, that you wake up one morning, forgive, and never have to think about it again. But forgiveness is more like a practice, like learning a new language. You start with simple phrases. I choose to release this. I choose not to carry this today. I choose my peace over my pain. Some days you'll speak this new language fluently. Other days you'll forget every word you learned and find yourself back in the mother tongue of hurt. That's okay. That's human. Forgiveness isn't perfection, it's direction. It's choosing over and over again to face toward freedom instead of captivity. Here's what forgiveness is not. It's not reconciliation. You can forgive someone and never speak to them again. You can forgive someone and still have boundaries. You can forgive someone and still protect yourself from further harm. Forgiveness doesn't mean you have to have dinner with them or invite them back into your life or pretend you're friends. Sometimes the most loving thing for you and for them is to forgive from a distance. Forgiveness is also not amnesia. You don't have to forget what happened. In fact, you shouldn't. The memory, cleansed of its poison, becomes wisdom. It becomes discernment. It becomes a teacher that helps you make better choices going forward. You can remember without reliving. You can remember without revenge. You can remember and still be free. I think what makes forgiveness so hard for us is that it feels like we're saying the hurt didn't matter. But that's not what forgiveness says at all. Forgiveness says, this hurt mattered so much that I refuse to let it define my life. This pain was so significant that I won't diminish it by letting it turn me into someone I don't want to be. This wound was so deep that I choose to heal it rather than pass it on. You see, hurt people hurt people. It's the oldest story in the world. Someone wounded them, so they wounded you. And if you're not careful, you'll wound someone else, and on it goes. Generation after generation, passing down pain like a family heirloom. But forgiveness breaks the cycle. It says, the pain stops here. I will metabolize this poison so my children don't have to drink it. I will transform this curse into a blessing, even if it takes me the rest of my life. That's the revolution of forgiveness. It's quiet. No one might even notice you're doing it. There are no parades for the forgiver, no medals for choosing grace over grievance. But make no mistake, it's the most powerful thing you can do. It changes the trajectory of your life. It changes the inheritance you leave behind. It changes the very atoms of your existence. Forgiveness is saying, I'm taking my power back. Because as long as you're waiting for them to fix what they broke, they have the power. As long as your peace depends on their apology, they have the power. As long as your ability to move forward is tied to their acknowledgement of wrongdoing, they have the power. But when you forgive, when you decide that your healing is not dependent on their anything, that's when you become the author of your own story again. I won't lie to you and tell you it's easy. It's not. It's some of the hardest work you'll ever do. Some days you'll have to forgive the same person 70 times, 7 times before lunch. Some days you'll think you've forgiven only to find another layer of hurt underneath, like an archaeological dig of pain. That's okay. Each layer you forgive is a victory. Each choice to release instead of rehearse is a triumph. And here's a secret. Start small. You don't have to forgive the biggest hurt first. Start with the driver who cut you off this morning. Practice on the friend who forgot your birthday. Build your forgiveness muscles on the small weights before you try to lift the heavy ones. Every time you choose forgiveness in the small things, you're training for forgiveness in the big things. Sometimes people ask me, but how do you forgive the unforgivable? And I say, one breath at a time, one choice at a time, one day at a time. You forgive what you can today. Tomorrow you might be able to forgive a little more. It's not about getting it perfect. It's about getting it started. And please, please forgive yourself too. Forgive yourself for trusting the wrong person. Forgive yourself for not seeing the signs. Forgive yourself for staying too long or leaving too soon. Forgive yourself for the ways you've hurt others while you were hurting. Forgive yourself for all the days you chose bitterness over better. You were doing the best you could with what you knew at the time. Now you know better. Now you can choose better. Because here's the thing about forgiveness, it's contagious. Once you start forgiving, really forgiving, you can't stop. You forgive them, you forgive yourself, you forgive life for being hard, you forgive God for allowing pain, you forgive your parents for being human, you forgive your children for not being perfect. You forgive and forgive and forgive until forgiveness becomes your default setting, your natural response, your way of moving through the world. And when that happens, when forgiveness becomes not something you do, but something you are, that's when you discover that forgiveness was never about them at all. It was about you becoming who you were always meant to be, someone who can transform pain into power, wounds into wisdom, hurt into healing. The revolution has already begun, my dear one. Every time you choose peace over punishment, every time you choose release over resentment, every time you choose your future over your past, you're part of it. You're changing the world, one forgiven hurt at a time. And that's how all revolutions begin quietly, in the hidden chambers of the heart, where one person decides to try a different way. To choose love over law. To choose grace over grievance. to choose freedom over the familiar prison of unforgiveness. Welcome to the revolution. It's quieter than you expected, but it's more powerful than you ever imagined. There will come a morning, I can't tell you which one, but it will come when you'll think about what happened, and it won't feel like a knife in your ribs. You'll remember, but you won't bleed. The memory will be there, clear as ever, but it will have lost its teeth. It will be like looking at a scar instead of an open wound. Still part of your story, but no longer your active pain. This is the miracle we're working toward. Not forgetting, not pretending, but remembering without bleeding. I used to think this was impossible. I thought memories were fixed things, frozen in time, carrying the same charge forever. But memories are living things. They change. Not the facts of them, those remain, but the feeling of them, the power of them, the way they live in our bodies that can transform. That does transform when we do the work of healing. You see, every time we remember something, we're not actually accessing a fixed file in our brain. We're reconstructing it, rebuilding it, and each time we rebuild it, we have the chance to add something new. Understanding, compassion, perspective, peace. We can't change what happened, but we can change what it means. We can change how it lives inside us. I have a memory that used to make me feel like I was drowning. Every time it surfaced, I would feel my chest tighten, my breath catch, my hands shake. The betrayal was so fresh, so raw, it might as well have happened yesterday instead of years ago. I couldn't understand how something that was over could still have so much power over me. But slowly, and I mean slowly, like watching a tree grow slowly, something began to shift. I started to see the memory differently, not the facts of it. The facts remained the same, but the frame around it began to change. I started to see the person who hurt me not as a monster, but as a broken human being acting out of their own pain. I started to see myself not as a victim, but as someone who survived, who learned, who grew. I started to see the whole experience not as something that ruined me, but as something that revealed me, my strength, my resilience, my capacity to heal. This didn't happen because I forced it. You can't force this kind of transformation any more than you can force a flower to bloom. It happened because I stopped fighting the memory and started befriending it. I stopped treating it like an enemy and started treating it like a teacher. A harsh teacher, yes, but a teacher nonetheless. Remembering without bleeding doesn't mean the memory becomes pleasant. Let's be clear about that. There are things in our past that will never be okay. There are hurts that will never make sense. There are losses that will always carry grief. But they don't have to carry active bleeding. They don't have to be open wounds that never heal. The key is integration. That's a fancy word for making peace with all the parts of your story. Not just the pretty parts, not just the parts you're proud of, all of it. The messy parts, the painful parts, the parts you wish you could edit out. Because here's the truth, you can't have selective history. You can't keep the wisdom and throw away the pain that taught it to you. You can't have the strength without the struggle that built it. You can't have the compassion without the suffering that opened your heart. So we learn to hold it all, the beauty and the brutality, the love and the loss, the betrayal and the becoming. We learn to tell our story in a way that honors the pain but doesn't glorify it, that acknowledges the wound but celebrates the healing, that remembers everything but isn't imprisoned by anything. I know a woman who keeps a photo album of her life, and it includes pictures from the hardest times, pictures from the year her marriage fell apart, pictures from the season of depression, pictures from the time she lost. Everything. When people ask her why she keeps those photos, she says, "Because that's part of how I became who I am. I'm not proud of the pain, but I'm proud of the person who survived it." That's remembering without bleeding. It's being able to look at your whole story, not just the chapters you'd choose to read at a dinner party and say, "Yes, this is mine, all of it, and I am still here, still standing, still becoming." Sometimes the bleeding stops suddenly. You're going about your day, and the memory surfaces, and you brace yourself for the usual pain, but it doesn't come. Instead, there's just acknowledgement. Oh yes, that happened. No drama, no devastation, just a fact, like knowing your birthday or your middle name. When this happens, it can feel strange, even wrong, like you're betraying your pain by no longer feeling it so acutely. But you're not betraying anything, you're healing. And healing is what you came here to do. Other times, the bleeding stops gradually, so gradually you don't even notice. Like twilight turning to night. You can't pinpoint the exact moment the sun disappears. You just know that it has. One day you realize you haven't thought about it in a week, then a month, then you think about it and feel neutral. Not happy, not sad, just neutral. This too is healing. The goal isn't to never think about what happened. The goal isn't to achieve some state of perpetual bliss where the past can't touch you. The goal is to be able to hold your memories without them holding you, to be able to visit the past without living there, to be able to acknowledge what happened without being defined by it. This requires a different kind of strength than the one we used to survive the original pain. That was the strength of endurance, of getting through. This is the strength of transformation, of moving beyond. It's the strength to look at what tried to break you and say, "You are part of my story, but you are not my whole story. You are a chapter, but you are not the ending." I want to tell you something important. When you reach this place of remembering without bleeding, you might feel a strange kind of grief. Grief for the part of you that stayed wounded for so long. Grief for all the years you spent bleeding. Grief for the person you might have been if it hadn't happened. This grief is normal. It's even necessary. Let yourself feel it. It's the grief of letting go, and letting go is sacred work. But don't let that grief fool you into thinking the bleeding was better. Don't romanticize the pain just because it's familiar. Don't mistake intensity for importance. Some of us have been in pain so long we've forgotten that peace is possible. We've mistaken suffering for depth. We've confused wounds with wisdom. But wisdom isn't the wound. Wisdom is what happens when the wound heals and leaves you with something you didn't have before. You'll know you're remembering without bleeding when you can tell your story without becoming your story. When you can share what happened without reliving what happened. When the memory informs you but doesn't inflame you. When it's something that happened to you but not something that's still happening to you. And here's the beautiful thing. When you can remember without bleeding, you become a lighthouse for others who are still in the storm. Your healed memories become medicine for those who think healing is impossible. Your ability to hold your story with grace gives others permission to believe they can hold theirs the same way. Because that's what we do for each other, isn't it? We show each other what's possible. We prove that you can survive the unsurvivable. We demonstrate that memories can keep their truth while losing their torture. We model what it looks like to be wounded but not weak, scarred but not scared, touched by pain but not taken by it. Your memories are yours. They're part of the tapestry of who you are. But they don't have to be threads of barbed wire. They can become silk, strong silk, resilient silk, beautiful silk. Still there, still part of the design, but transformed in texture and purpose. This is the alchemy of healing, turning blood into beauty, wounds into wisdom, memories into medicine, not forgetting, never forgetting, but remembering with grace, remembering with power, remembering without bleeding. And you, dear one, are already on your way. Every time you choose peace over pain, every time you respond rather than react, every time you tell your story from strength rather than sorrow, you're teaching your memories how to live differently inside you. One day, and that day is coming sooner than you think, you'll touch that tender place. And instead of pain, you'll feel power. Instead of bleeding, you'll feel blessed. Not blessed that it happened, but blessed that you survived. Blessed that you healed. Blessed that you can remember without bleeding. That day is coming. I promise you, that day is coming. After every storm, there comes a morning when the rain stops, the wind dies down. The sun, tentative at first, begins to peek through the clouds, and you step outside to survey the damage, expecting to find only destruction. But that's when you see it, the earth, dark and rich from the rain, the air, crystal clear, washed clean, and tiny green shoots already pushing through the soil, as if they'd been waiting for this exact moment to begin. This is where you are now, my dear one, standing in the garden after the storm. You might not recognize it at first. You've been in the storm so long, you've forgotten what stillness feels like. You've been fighting the wind so hard, you don't know what to do with calm. You've been soaked by rain for so many seasons, you barely remember the feeling of sun on your face. But look around, really look. The storm has passed, and what's left isn't destruction, it's possibility. I remember my own morning after. I woke up, and for the first time in years, my first thought wasn't about the pain. It wasn't about what happened. It wasn't about them. My first thought was about breakfast. Simple, ordinary breakfast. I lay there in bed, amazed. When had this happened? When had my mind become my own again? When had my first waking moment stopped being a rehearsal of hurt? That's how healing announces itself sometimes. Not with fanfare, not with a graduation ceremony, but with ordinary moments that feel extraordinary because they're finally free of the weight you've been carrying. You laugh at something silly and realize it's been months since you laughed like that. You see something beautiful and actually see it. Instead of seeing it through the film of old tears, you have a whole conversation without once thinking about the past. These moments are your green shoots, evidence of new life. The garden after the storm is different from the garden before. This is important to understand. You're not going back to who you were. That person, beautiful as they were, didn't know what you know now, hadn't survived what you've survived, hadn't discovered the depths of their own strength. The storm changed you. But, and this is the miracle, it didn't destroy you, it revealed you. In my garden now, different things grow. Before the storm, I grew flowers that needed perfect conditions, delicate things that wilted at the first sign of trouble. But now I grow perennials, hardy beauties that come back year after year, plants with deep roots that can weather whatever comes. I still grow tender things too, but now I know how to protect them. The storm taught me that. You see, the garden after the storm isn't just about healing, it's about becoming. Becoming who you were always meant to be, but couldn't be until you'd weathered this particular storm. Some things can only grow in soil that's been turned over, aerated by upheaval. Some seeds only germinate after they've been through fire. Some strength only comes from having been broken and putting yourself back together with your own hands. There's a sacredness to this garden. It's holy ground because it's been consecrated by your tears. It's precious because you know what it cost. Every bloom is a victory. Every new leaf is a testament. Every bit of beauty is a rebellion against what tried to leave you barren. But here's what they don't tell you about the garden after the storm. Sometimes you'll miss the rain. I know that sounds crazy, but it's true. There's an intensity to pain that can become addictive. There's a strange comfort in chaos when it's all you've known. There's an identity in being the wounded one that can be hard to release. So sometimes, on perfectly peaceful days, you'll find yourself looking at the sky, almost wishing for clouds. Not because you want the storm back, but because you've forgotten who you are without something to survive. This is when you must remember, you are not just a survivor, you are a gardener, a creator, a tender of beauty, a nurturer of life. The storm was never your purpose, it was just weather you had to get through. Your purpose is here, in this sun-drenched soil, planting seeds of the future. And what seeds they are! Seeds of wisdom that can only come from experience. Seeds of compassion that can only come from having needed it yourself. Seeds of joy that are all the more precious because you know their opposite. Seeds of peace that grow strong because they're rooted in truth, not naivety. Seeds of love that are fearless because you've already survived the worst that heartbreak can do. In this garden, you get to choose what grows. Not everything that wants to take root belongs here. Bitterness will try to plant itself, disguised as wisdom. Cynicism will try to creep in, pretending to be discernment. Fear will scatter its seeds, claiming to be protection. But you're the gardener now. You decide what stays and what goes. You decide what gets watered and what gets weeded out. This is the most beautiful part of the garden. After the storm, it's completely yours. No one else can tell you what to plant. No one else can dictate what blooms. The person who hurt you has no say here. The past has no vote. The old voices that told you who you were and what you deserved, they're not allowed in this garden. This is sovereign territory, sacred space, holy ground, where you and the divine collaborate on what comes next. Some days you'll work in your garden and remember the storm. You'll see a corner where the damage was particularly bad, and you'll feel an echo of the old pain. That's okay. That's human. But notice it's an echo now, not a scream. It's a memory, not a current event. You can acknowledge it, honor it even, and then go back to tending what's growing now, because things are growing now. Can you see them? Can you feel them? Life pushing up through soil that once seemed dead. Hope spreading leaves toward a sun that once seemed permanently hidden. Love, yes, love blooming again in a heart that thought it would never trust another spring. This is what they mean when they talk about beauty from ashes. This is what resurrection looks like in real life. Not a magic trick where everything goes back to how it was, but a slow, sacred process where what was broken becomes the foundation for what is beautiful, where what was destroyed becomes the compost for what is created, where what seemed like an ending becomes the most extraordinary beginning. Your garden is unique. No one else has your exact combination of heartbreak and healing. No one else has your particular blend of pain transformed into purpose. No one else can grow what you can grow, offer what you can offer, become what you're becoming. The storm that tried to destroy you has instead given you gifts you never asked for, but now wouldn't trade depth, resilience, compassion, wisdom, and a kind of beauty that only comes from having been broken and choosing to bloom anyway. So, tend your garden, dear one. Water it with gratitude for having survived. Fertilize it with intention for what comes next. Let the sun of each new day warm the soil of your becoming. Pull the weeds of old thoughts that no longer serve. Prune what needs pruning. Celebrate what's flowering. Share your abundance with those still in their storms. Because that's the final secret of the garden after the storm. It's not just for you. Others will come, storm-battered and weary, convinced that nothing will ever grow again. And you'll be able to say, with the authority that only comes from experience, "Look at my garden. I know it seems impossible now, but this is what awaits you on the other side. This beauty, this peace, this becoming, this life." And they'll look at you, at your garden, at the light in your eyes that wasn't there before the storm, and they'll begin to believe, not in forgetting, not in pretending, but in the possibility of genuine transformation, in the truth that storms end, in the promise that gardens grow, in the miracle of becoming more beautiful for having been broken. Welcome to your garden, beloved. Welcome to your becoming. Welcome to the life that was always waiting for you on the other side of the storm. The sun is shining, the soil is ready, and you magnificent, resilient, beautiful you are finally home.